Did you know that Canada quietly started a boycott against the United States and now the entire world is following? What began as a simple response to new tariffs has turned into something no one expected. Empty shelves where American goods used to sit, canceled vacations to New York and Florida, and even European towns replacing Coca-Cola with local apple juice. At first, people laughed it off. There's no way Canada could hurt America's economy, right? But then supermarkets across British Columbia slapped Canadian flags on produce. Shoppers proudly refused us brands and flights to the United States plummeted by more than 70%. Suddenly, the world realized something. If Canada could push back, so could everyone else. And that's exactly what happened. Mexico, Denmark, France, Spain, India. 6 countries, 6 major economies all joined the wave, each for their own reasons, but together forming something much bigger than any trade war. From beef in China being replaced with Australian imports to Europe, creating apps that help consumers avoid American brands altogether. This is not just about politics. It's about ordinary people in grocery stores and restaurants making choices that ripple through the global economy. If you think this is just about a few oranges or a soda brand, think again. We are talking about billions of dollars, crashing tourism numbers, and even allies openly refusing American defense deals. This story is too big to ignore. So, make sure to hit like and subscribe right now because today we're breaking down exactly how this Canadian boycott spread like wildfire and changed the global economy forever. Number 1. Canada. The story begins with Canada, America's closest neighbor and one of its largest trading partners. When President Trump slapped tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, Ottawa could have taken the usual diplomatic route. Instead, Canadians responded in a way that caught the world's attention. Not with threats, not with weapons, but with their wallets. Suddenly, everyday shopping choices became political statements. Families walking through grocery aisles stopped to check labels. If a product came from the United States, many shoppers simply put it back on the shelf. Canadian supermarkets noticed and they leaned into it. Stores began highlighting homegrown goods with bright Canadian flags on the stickers. Items that once carried US logos were replaced with produce from Canada, Europe, or even South America. The boycott spread beyond food. US cars sat unsold on dealership lots. Vacation packages to Disney World and New York City lost their shine as Canadians opted for trips within their own country or overseas.
Travel warnings only fueled the trend. By the summer season, flights from Canada to the United States were reportedly down by 70%. A staggering collapse for such a close relationship. And it wasn't just about avoiding American goods. It was about pride. For many Canadians, buying local felt like standing up for themselves in the face of unfair treatment. This moment became the spark. The message was simple but powerful. If Canada could push back against America's dominance, maybe the rest of the world could, too. Number 2. Mexico. If Canada lit the spark, Mexico poured fuel on the fire. For decades, Mexico has been one of the United States' biggest export markets and a key part of North America's supply chain. But when Trump pushed harsh tariffs, threatened to build the wall, and publicly belittled Mexican leaders, the response from ordinary people was sharp. Stop buying American, walk through a supermarket in Mexico City or Guadalajara and you could see the shift firsthand. Shelves once stocked with American apples or yams were now filled with fruit from Chile, Ecuador, or even Italy. In some stores, U.S. products were almost invisible, replaced by imports from South America, Europe, or local farms. The boycott wasn't always loud or organized. It was a quiet, everyday decision by millions of families to buy something else. Tourism took a major hit, too. Mexicans are among the top visitors to the United States, but those numbers started falling fast. During the first quarter alone, flights from Mexico to U.S. destinations dropped by 25%. Families that once spent vacations in Los Angeles or Orlando began exploring beaches at home in Cancun, Puerto Vallarta, and Baja California. The money stayed in Mexico, and the message was clear. If America didn't respect its neighbor, Mexico didn't need to spend its pesos across the border. This wasn't just about politics. It was personal. Mexicans showed that even a country deeply tied to the United States could choose differently. And once they did, the world started paying attention. Number 3. Denmark. Denmark's boycott story began with one of the strangest diplomatic episodes in recent memory. In 2019, President Trump suggested that the United States should buy Greenland, a massive island that is part of the Kingdom of Denmark and home to over 50,000 people. What was likely intended as a bold real estate-style move turned into an international insult. Denmark's prime minister called the idea absurd, and many Danes saw it as a dismissal of their sovereignty. The fallout went beyond angry headlines. Across Denmark, consumers began quietly signaling their disapproval through their wallets. Supermarkets introduced clear, made in Europe labels to help shoppers identify non-American products. It wasn't just about food. It was about sending a message. Ordinary Danes decided they would rather support local and European goods than reward what they saw as disrespect from Washington.
It wasn't a flashy boycott, with mass protests in the streets. Instead, it was subtle but effective. People began skipping American brands in favor of European ones. US goods that weren't such strong appeal, from clothing labels to packaged foods, started losing traction. Even small daily choices, like buying a Danish cheese instead of an imported one, became acts of quiet resistance. For Denmark, the Greenland incident was about pride and dignity. It showed that a smaller nation could push back against America, not through force, but through consumer choices. And in doing so, Denmark joined the growing list of countries reshaping global trade, one shopping cart at a time. Number 4. France. If Denmark's boycott was quiet, France's was loud and proud. The French government, led by President Emmanuel Macron, openly called America's tariffs brutal and unfounded. But the strongest reaction didn't just come from politicians. It came from everyday French people. They decided that, if Washington wanted a trade war, they would fight it in their own way by turning away from American products. One of the most symbolic moves happened at the community level. In several towns, Coca-Cola, the global symbol of American culture, was removed from public events. At festivals and municipal gatherings, Coca-Cola was swapped for locally-made apple juice. For many French citizens, this wasn't just about beverages. It was about national pride and resisting foreign pressure. Online, boycott campaigns spread rapidly. Social media groups encouraged people to avoid US brands, and some even created lists of replacement products made in France or elsewhere in Europe. Popular American companies like Tesla, McDonald's, Amazon, and Apple became frequent targets. And it worked. Surveys showed that 6 in 10 French people supported boycotting US goods. Tourism also became part of the protest. Many French travelers openly said they would avoid trips to the United States while Trump was in power. The numbers backed it up. Visits from France to America dropped significantly, cutting into one of the US's most important sources of international tourism. For France, the boycott was both cultural and economic. It was about rejecting what they saw as unfair treatment, while also proving that a proud nation could stand tall by supporting its own. Number 5. Spain. Spain may not always make global headlines like France or Canada, but its role in the boycott movement is just as important. In Spain, the pushback against American products didn't begin with fiery speeches. It began with a simple message shared in shops, homes, and social media. By local, the idea was straightforward. Why buy American oranges, lettuce, or packaged salads when Spain produces its own fresh fruit and vegetables? Local campaigns spread across Spanish cities, encouraging consumers to choose produce grown in Andalusia or Valencia over imports from the United States. In supermarkets, the change became visible.
Shelves that once displayed American salad kits and convenience foods now showcased Spanish or European alternatives. But it wasn't only about groceries. Social media movements gave the boycott momentum. Activists and ordinary citizens alike shared lists of American brands to avoid and recommended local replacements. Posts under hashtags like Compol by Bilical gained traction, especially among younger Spaniards who wanted to turn everyday spending into a form of resistance. The movement also carried a cultural undertone. Spaniards are deeply proud of their cuisine and agricultural heritage. Turning away from U.S. imports was not just a protest against tariffs. It was also a way to celebrate national identity. Restaurants began highlighting local ingredients even more prominently, turning political protest into culinary pride. Spain's boycott may have looked modest compared to bigger economies, but it played a key role in showing how local pride and global politics can mix, and how even small choices add up to something powerful. Number 6, India. India's entry into the boycott movement may be the most significant of all because of its sheer size and growing economic power. With more than 1 billion people, India is one of the fastest-growing consumer markets on Earth. For years, American companies saw India as a golden opportunity. Fast food chains, tech giants, and retail brands rushed to open stores and expand their presence. But when President Trump announced 50% tariffs on Indian goods, the relationship changed overnight. Instead of backing down, Indian leaders and business executives rallied their citizens to push back. Supporters of Prime Minister Narendra Modi fueled campaigns that called for boycotts of American products. What made this especially powerful was that it wasn't just political elites. Ordinary consumers joined in. U.S. household names quickly became targets. Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Amazon, and Apple, brands once considered aspirational, suddenly became symbols of foreign exploitation. In fact, the irony was striking. India, the country with more Domino's pizza outlets than any other U.S. chain, was now telling its citizens to turn their backs on it. For many Indians, the boycott wasn't just about tariffs. It was about pride, self-reliance, and asserting independence on the world stage. Choosing local brands became a patriotic act, and buying second-hand clothing or avoiding U.S. electronics turned into small but meaningful forms of protest. India's participation proved the boycott was no longer limited to neighbors or allies of America. It was now global, stretching from North America to Europe and all the way to Asia's most populous democracy. From Canada's spark to India's massive pushback, 6 nations turned everyday choices into a global movement. America's dominance is no longer guaranteed, and the world is watching. Do you think this boycott marks the start of America's decline? Drop your thoughts below. Like and subscribe for more.